But getting things kicked off today, of course, is my co-host and co-award winner, Felicia Bridges. Felicia, got to ask you right off the bat, given our first guest, when you open a newspaper or go online, what section of a newspaper do you go to first? And what's...
I usually start with the front page.
Front page, okay.
And then after that, I go to features.
All right. Yeah, in my case, I got to say I go straight to local news typically. And I think this is a great question to ask our guest, Professor Eleni Gastis from journalism. Eleni, when you open your newspaper typically or go online, what's the first section you go to?
I am a local news person. I love reading about Oakland, Berkeley, local politics, local government, what's going on. It's kind of dramatic. It's a little bit of a saga, and it always has some good information.
Last story that you read.
The last story that I read was a fantastic one, actually, yesterday in The Guardian, which was an investigative expose into a far-right kind of shadow figure from Twitter. And actually, reporters from The Guardian looked into who he really was and found out he was a composition professor at the University of Irvine.
Wow.
Explosive investigative piece, just tracking down based on, him talking about his father passing away and accessing death records and kind of aligning them with public records based on who they thought he was. A fascinating piece. I recommend everybody reads it.
Amazing. What got you into the investigative part of journalism?
I mean, the investigative, I don't know. I wasn't a very investigative reporter when I was a reporter. Yeah. I was more of a local news reporter and focused a lot mainly on features. And I was originally hired actually as a night cops reporter, which means I had the late night shift and I had a police scanner and I had a list of police codes. And I had to listen to the scanner from about 6 o'clock at night until midnight every day, learn these codes. And if I didn't know them, look down at my sheet, which was in front of me. And if something happened in Fremont, Newark, or Union City, I had to get in my putt-putt after I looked up where I was going on MapQuest. I don't know if anybody remembers the MapQuest days. No navigation, and go to the scene of the crime, whatever that was. So there wasn't, too busy of an area. It was very suburban. But when I wasn't doing night cops reporting, I was able to report on a lot of the things that I wanted to report on. It's a very interesting place, the Tri-Valley there. They actually have the largest diaspora of Afghans outside of Afghanistan. There's a part of Fremont that's called Little Kabul. And, this was post-September 11th. Everything was rife with misinformation, and I really wanted to, give this community proper highlighting and allow them to tell their story in their own voice, which was difficult because I wasn't Afghan and I was coming from outside of their community. So that was an interesting experience.
It's kind of interesting that what you described, because I can think of two movies I've seen off the top of my head where somebody is either a television news producer or working in the media, and in their living room, they have a police scanner just playing all the time, just like others might have music playing in the background. So Up Close and Personal with Robert Redford and Michelle Pfeiffer is the one that comes to mind specifically.
Full memory for movies. I've had many conversations with Rudy.
Yes. Yeah, I've got Rotten Tomatoes as one of my faves on my websites. But well, let's take it back a little bit further. What got you, because of course you are a journalism professor, but first and foremost, you're a journalist. What got you into journalism?
Well, that wasn't the path that I thought I was going to have when I was 4, and people draw what they want to be when they grow up. I actually drew a belly dancer because I thought I was going to be a belly dancer. And, just kind of, I had a very atypical life growing up and didn't really have much direction. And actually, I went to Laney College.
Laney alum. I love it.
Right. Yes. And I had a professor, Meryl Siegel, actually, who just retired a couple of years ago and said to me, you're really interested in current events. You're a good writer. You love nonfiction. Have you ever thought about journalism? And I come from an immigrant family where, if you're not a doctor or a lawyer or a professor, you're, maybe not doing as well as everybody else. So, I decided to explore journalism, and I didn't take any journalism classes at Laney, but I just kind of jumped in, feet first, and ended up going to San Francisco State, transferring to San Francisco State, where I had a double major of journalism and international relations, and just started doing the work and kind of fell in love with it. We were always told that we should work only on the school publication. And I actually was trying to seek out some internships through connections I had made, mentors, professors, and I was offered that night cops internship.
And I really have to say, I appreciate that aspect of your background, because you've paid that forward and offered internship opportunities to our students.
Yes, I've tried to connect as much, because it's great to write, of course, for the school publication, but any published work that you can get outside really weighs a lot, because when you go for a job interview, they ask you questions. Of course, they want to know, what you know about ethics or what your background is, but they also want to see actual clips, is what we call them in journalism. They want to see that you can walk into a board meeting and write about it, even if you don't know anything about government. They want to know that you can write an obituary. They want to know that you can write an editorial. So I try and, kind of pepper that throughout all of my instruction, make sure that students know. And towards the end of the semester, we'll say, hey, just for you to think about, you don't have any features in your portfolio so far. Work with your editor-in-chief and figure out if there's a feature you can write so that you have some different things to show.
That's great.
Eleni, am I saying your name right?
I tell my students it's like Lenny Kravitz with an extra E. Eleni is how we say it in Greek. Yeah, but
Eleni.
Most people just say, oh, you're named after the school? Laney, how cool.
Eleni,
yeah.
You are a journalism instructor, professor, and also you sort of direct oversight of the Citizen? Right.
So I'm the advisor to the publication. So I facilitate the newsroom. So our publication is completely student run. So students pitch, they edit, they publish, they do everything. By law, I actually am not allowed to interfere in anything that they publish. So it is completely student run.
So in your instruction, where I was trying to go.
Yeah.
I find that the Citizen is very, very strong on investigative reporting. Mm-hmm. What sort of instruction and advice do you give your students when it comes to investigative reporting? Because I often think that it's hard to find the real story or the truth of the matter. You have to talk to a lot, or you just need to know where to look. Tell me what you tell your students.
Yeah. So, again, I'm trying to give them the skills that align with industry so that they can walk into any newsroom. And if their editor says, I need you to find out everything you can about this person, or I need you to take a look at this contract and tell me what it says because the city council's voting on it tonight. So I try and give them those tools. So, I'll show them different resources through public records, and kind of help them navigate what the process would be. And, kind of the bulk of being a reporter is being able to cultivate sources and find your own stories. So one simple example would be like we do an agenda review. So every time there's a board of trustees meeting here at Peralta, we pull up the agenda, they go through all the documents, and I kind of facilitate a course discussion where everybody talks about things that stand out to them or things they don't understand or things that they think could be a story. And we kind of like walk through it that way. So there's definitely a way to seek information. I think most people would be surprised to know exactly how much information is public and what is considered public information. I think that's surprising to most folks, but I'm all about giving them the tools. And then they, like I said, they pinpoint, pitch, edit, and navigate their own reporting. And I'm there to help facilitate. So
as a reporter, how did you ask the tough question?
How did I ask the tough question? So of course, asking the question is half the battle. I find that a great tool is often to be silent as well and listen. So asking a hard question, of course, you don't want it to be leading in any way. You want it to be open-ended enough that someone can kind of cultivate their own answer. But it's also really the reporter's job to listen. So I encourage the students to, if you're in an interview with someone, give them a little bit of breathing room too. I think we're anxious and we always want to fill up like blank noise if, unused space in the conversation, but sometimes it's not always necessary. So yeah.
A couple episodes ago, we had your editor-in-chief here on the show, and I asked the same question, and she spoke to being courteous with a report, with the person, your subject, and then also just kind of creating an atmosphere in which the person feels relaxed while they're speaking with you. So you mentioned kind of what you did as a reporter. As far as asking questions, what do you teach students?
What do I teach? I always teach them, first of all, to never go in cold to any interview. So there's been a couple instances in the newsroom where students have gone into interviews without researching their subject beforehand, even if they think that they know them, even if the person is a well-known entity on campus. So I always advise them, come up with at least 10 questions before you go into any interview, prepare yourself, do background research, because there could be like a story within a story. Of course, being courteous and considerate is a huge part of it too. I think explaining as much as possible to your subject, kind of, the process of the actual reporting. So just going to ask you, a couple questions today. It's going to take this long. Please let me know if you have any follow-up things that you'd like to say, really creating a space where they don't feel like you're there to control them or to control what they have to say, because that's really what it should be. It should be a free-flowing conversation.
Great to be talking with Professors Eleni Gastis and Myron Franklin right here at the President's Desk, heard on 96.9 FM, KGPC, also at kgpc969.org. So from a distance, prospective student coming in, perhaps someone who's been working but wanting to come back to college, or someone out of high school, what would you tell them about the journalism program?
I would tell them that this is a great place to not only get reporting experience, but also to get some really basic foundational life skills. So things like critical thinking, coming in, not...
Actually, Eleni, I'd like to ask, critical thinking, what is that?
Critical thinking. Well, Rudy, I would say critical thinking, particularly when it comes to journalism, the best way I could describe it is the ability to be wrong, right? Coming into any story. It's hard to have some ethical conversations with students. You might feel one way, or you might want the outcome of a story to be one thing, but how it actually unfolds, you have to be willing to go with that flow. You have to be willing to be wrong in your assumptions, and you have to train yourself to walk into every story without assumptions. So, I would say that's what we work on the most.
What are some courses students in journalism would expect to take?
Yeah, I think our foundational course is Survey of Mass Media, which we really focus on media bias overwhelmingly. This semester, students are doing some wonderful presentations on examining key points in history and how there were clear examples of media bias, and presenting them to the class. I think it's really important to think about moving forward as journalists, as citizens of this nation, as informed, civically engaged individuals, that we're looking at the past also, so we don't repeat it. So that's a great course. Students are absolutely wonderful. Of course, news writing is a big class, teaching kind of the journalistic writing style. That is I would say that's kind of my banner class. I love teaching it. I've tweaked it and refined it so much over the past years. Students get to really delve into different genres. So they write 4 different stories over the course of the semester and really learn about the actual writing skills. And then we have some industry aligned courses that are new. So there's 2 in particular that I've brought up. Data journalism, which of course data journalism is one of the emerging genres of and very highly in demand by, local industry, being able to tell a story that is backed with like intense data mining and analysis. And as we all know, data can be manipulated very easily. So also thinking about the ethics of data, which we think about words can also be manipulated really easily too. So we have a wonderful instructor. He is the data editor at the San Francisco Chronicle, and he is one of kind of like the 4 running, experts in the field right now. So we're just so lucky to have him teaching. And he actually wrote that article in the Chronicle recently that was talking about Laney's acceptance rates to UC Berkeley. He didn't write it, but yeah.
That was very welcome data.
Yes, he led that team. We're also starting an investigative reporting class, which of course all of the classes that we teach touch on investigative aspects. But this is a very specific course that is going to utilize public records, more intensive public records dealing with confidential sources, really industry demand, high level reporting, which actually a lot of newsrooms approached me locally and said, we've got a lot of reporters, they're coming in, they've got the chops, but we really need them to be able to do a public information request. We really need them to be really able to delve into, more confidential sourcing and things that are, very complex to navigate as a reporter. So I actually, wrote that class along with Matt Drange, who is works for the Business Insider. And Matt Drange is doing incredible work throughout the state. He's actually doing investigations of sexual abuse at school districts, both in California and nationwide. He actually investigated his own journalism instructor in Rosemead, California, who had kind of a long paper trail of some suspicious activity. And there was a lawsuit filed now from the students from Rosemead High School just last week because of his reporting. So he's an incredible reporter, also teaches at Humboldt State, and is going to be teaching that for us.
You made reference to some of your contacts or resources, and at Laney College, if there is a career discipline, that's a requirement that you have that advisory board.
Yep.
Could you tell us about some other individuals that support journalism at Laney College or other entities?
Sure. I have been lucky enough to have a lot of support from mentors and from industry folks that I've known over the years. We have an attorney on our advisory board who, is representing the Washington Post against Ron DeSantis. We have, of course, Dan Kopp from the Chronicle. We have members of Oakland Side. We have, trying to think, from KTVU. We have a public relations professional. We have a fantastic advisory board that really gets together with us and of course, the students always come to the advisory board too, which is great. They're always excited to meet the students and learn about the work that they're doing. And just tell us what the industry needs. And that is how I've tried to respond by creating relevant coursework, by supporting students, by aligning them also with opportunities through internships, encouraging them. We might have some exciting news soon again. Always something exciting happening in the journalism department.
The Citizen's been recognized a little bit. Could you tell us about some of the recent honors that it's earned?
Sure. Recently in October, the students won the Student Press Law Center's inaugural Freedom of Information Award, which is a national award where they were up against every four-year university in the country. And so it's pretty cool that our community college in Oakland won that award.
That was a great one to share.
Yeah, it was a very cool one. Most recently, last week, we were finalists for the Mark of Excellence Awards, which are the Society of Professional Journalists Regional Chapter 11, Arizona, Hawaii, California, Guam, basically a large chunk of the West Coast represented. And the students were recognized in two categories. So in-depth reporting and investigative reporting for kind of packages of their work that I nominated them with. But industry professionals judged and, placed them pretty high. They were right underneath Theo Baker from Stanford University, who had a huge expose on the president of Stanford's plagiarized dissertation, I believe. So it's pretty cool to see the students in such high regard. And now, you hear of the Citizen. There's buzz statewide. There's buzz nationwide now, too, about our publication. I just think that it's really cool that the students are getting the recognition that they deserve for the incredible industry-aligned work that they do.
Terribly obvious question, but here goes. After graduation, what's next for many of your students, including maybe even after transfer and after that diploma that gets them into the workplace happens?
Yeah, I would say there's kind of a notion that once you finish this program, or if you transfer and go to a four-year university, that you're going to grow a mustache and go to a newsroom somewhere and drink coffee all day. That is, of course, an option for you. But there are lots of other options. So we've had students that have gone on to law school, have students that work for nonprofits. They become communications directors. They work in tech. They do lots of cool stuff. I think one of our recent graduates now works in the women's studies at San Francisco State.
So a number of different options.
Oh, many different options. So I would say it is a fallacy that you can only become a reporter with this skill set. And I would argue it's in demand for any employer, really, to know that you can write well, concisely, that you're organized, that you have analytical skills and people skills, all the things that we focus on.
Felicia, I got to ask, do you think it would help our ratings if I grew a mustache as part of? No. Okay.
It might.
I don't know. Couldn't hurt them, I guess. But anyway. Okay. So we're going to go back to Eleni, the reporter.
Oh, okay.
And let's say that you've had an opportunity to interview somebody, or you've collected your notes of the who, what, when, where, why, how of something that happened. Take us through just your personal process of taking that and turning it into print.
Yes. The drafting process, of course, really relies on the reporter. And then after you're drafting, of course, there's a lot of fact checking that goes on, where you are working with your editor as well. When you're submitting your finished draft, I think that what most folks don't know is that's typically pretty far from what ends up getting published in most cases. Why? Because I think it is ideal to have some editorial oversight and to have someone looking at your work, asking you the hard questions. These are the ways that we can kind of deflect bias, even though we can't eliminate it altogether. We can definitely mitigate it, and we can ensure that the finished product is as accurate and as sound as possible. And of course, there's always defamation and libel and other things that you want to be
these boxes you need to check and such.
Yes.
Writer's block. Does it ever happen?
Oh, totally. Yes.
Even when kind of the details of a story are laid out, or again, the 5WH of it.
Of course. And sometimes the story changes too, right? So if you wait too long, that's why the notion of timeliness is really important in journalism. You have to kind of pump it out as soon as possible, yet still take time to really make sure that it is accurate and, pinpointing everything that you need it to. And so, the story can really evolve and change. And just having the most timely, accurate version of your report is really what's most important.
Dewey defeats Truman. That's the one that always comes to mind when I think of
Holding up
writing your story just a bit too soon.
Yeah.
So that's.
And luckily now we don't have print, right? So we don't have to worry about that. And of course, corrections and things like that are much easier to make in an online platform. We also have analytics, which are beautiful. They tell us what our readers are looking for. So, you know, the digital landscape has really, I think, helped journalism a lot more than it's hindered it.
So we've got a couple of minutes left with you, and I'm really enjoying this conversation and hope you come back again so you can be a 3-time guest.
Oh,
But whether it's your experience as a reporter or watching what happens with our reporters at the Citizen, I didn't say student reporters.
Yeah,
that meeting where the editor-in-chief pulls everybody together and gives the story assignments, what's that like?
Yeah, I mean, what we set up in our newsroom is very similar to what would happen in any newsroom. That's why I hate that term student journalists, because we're just still doing the work of, you know, real journalists. So it really is kind of a discussion time where sometimes students will bring forward an idea. Or other times the editor, so our editor in particular is kind of in tune with all upcoming events, also getting reach outs from people and bringing it forward. It really is a brainstorming time, I think, for the students, and where they're trying to figure out how the stories they're going to choose will match up with all of these elements that they're looking for, right? So timeliness, and of course, most important, I think, to them, at least it has been since I've been around in 2019, is service to the Peralta community. So we have a big advantage at the Citizen in the sense that nobody's really looking at the Peralta Community College District. When in the past, when there were more resources, Mr. Douglas Allen Taylor, for example, at the Berkeley Daily Planet, he passed away just a couple years ago, but he was one person that delved deep into Peralta and kind of watched, of course, the hundreds of millions of dollars that are spent here. But as you know, the journalism industry has changed and resources for local news have been really gutted. We have a unique position where we're able to cover this district and the surrounding community really succinctly. So I think the students take that responsibility seriously, and we always have like some large scale ideas maybe that might come into the newsroom, like, oh, I can't wait to write about this tattoo shop. Or, God, I love this Oakland event, and they'll say, okay, but what does that have to do with Peralta? So I'm proud that they have that sense.
Wow. Just listening to you kind of share just so many images in the mind of what a career in journalism could look like. If prospective students want to get in touch with you, learn more about the program, how they get in touch.
Absolutely. They can email me at eegastis@peralta.edu. I'm always around. I make myself very available to students and prospective students. I've had students meet with me on Zoom, just ask questions. And I really encourage that of everybody, right? Anybody who has questions about the Citizen, reach out to me, like, let's have a conversation. Let me explain how the publication works. Let me tell you about other classes. Let me help you understand the work of reporting, because it's
excellent.
Yeah,
okay.
it is.
Eleni, thanks so much for joining us. Look forward to having you back.